Hi everyone, this is just a quick video where I'm going to talk about how I balance training for endurance triathlons and ultramarathons. So looking at a typical training week for me. Don't worry, the title of the video, Finding Balance, isn't about me trying to do yoga, because that always ends unsuccessfully. So what I'm going to talk about is about how I structure a typical training week and develop the blocks. So first off, what I look at is normally 3 weeks of build and then a rest week. Sometimes it's 2 weeks on and a rest week. It really depends on how I feel. I'm quite flexible from that perspective, unlike at yoga. And then the other piece is about how I structure each day within the week. Typically I'll have 2 easier days and I'll do a block of 3 days and a block of 2 days, which will be harder. So looking back at Strava, and there's a link to my profile in the description down below, so feel free to follow me on Strava if you want. So looking at that, over the last build week I was doing around 11, 12, 13 hours a week just training, and that's split across swimming, cycling and running predominantly. There are some weight sessions in there, but those don't get registered in Strava in terms of total time. I then had a recovery week, which is normally between 8 and 9 hours worth of training, and then the current building block I'm in at the moment, I'm doing around 16, 17 hours a week training. I'll then have another recovery week, similar length, 8 or 9 hours, and then a 3-week building block after that. I'll be increasing it again. So what I've been doing is slowly increasing the amount of time I'm training. I don't specifically look at mileage, kilometers, distance or elevation, although that is important to me when it comes to running. What I'm really looking at is time, because if I do, for example, a run up Snowdon, the distance I covered there was significantly less than the 4 hours, give or take, that I was at Snowdon, versus a local run where I covered 44-45 kilometers in 5 hours. So looking at distance isn't as relevant to me, especially when I'm doing off-road training, so I'll look more at elevation from that perspective and total time where I've actually been training. The other thing obviously with cycling as well, it depends very much on the road conditions, the weather conditions can obviously impact it as well, and also to some extent the bike that I'm riding, depending on what I'm looking at. So again, I'm looking at slowly progressing total hours of training. My typical build weeks fall into, as I mentioned, 2 easier days, and between them there'll be a block of 3 days and a block of 2 days where I'll be doing longer hours and more intense exercise. So typically what I'll look to do is have a easier day on a Monday, which will involve a swim and a weights vest walk. That's where I put on a weights vest and walk for about 2 to 3 kilometers very easily, just to get the legs recovered after a tough training weekend the week before. Tuesday will be a bike interval session and a up-tempo run. Now that may take the form of intervals, fartleks, it might be slightly longer tempo runs, but more higher intensity runs for that. Wednesday will be again a swim, but on that swim it will be typically longer. Monday swim is currently in the region of around 3 to 3.5 kilometers, lower intensity, more about technique. Wednesday swim is more about the endurance and building up to sort of 3.5 to 4 kilometers spent in the pool on Wednesday, and then Wednesday evening will either be a weight session or I may do a run or a cycle again, and that'd be the higher intensity. So sometimes what I do to mix it up is I do a back-to-back 2 cycle days with higher intensities or 2 run days with higher intensities, but normally it'll be a swim and then a weight session. Thursday, replicate what I did essentially on the Tuesday, different workout, but it'll be a higher intensity bike session on the turbo trainer most often, and then also a run. Run durations are typically between 1 and 1.5 hours. Bike sessions at the moment are about 35 to 45 minutes, but they've been steadily increasing, and by the time I get over the summer, getting closer to the Swedeman Triathlon, which is what I'm training for, those higher intensity bike sessions will be an hour to an hour and a half total duration. Friday, an easier swim session, probably in the region of the moment about 3 kilometers to 3.5 kilometers again, but it's a little bit more sprint work, sort of interval session. So the last one I did had 10 times 100 meters at an up pace tempo. Saturday is typically a long bike ride, doing it in the region of around 4 to 4.5 hours at the moment. Again, those will be steadily increasing. and I'll get up to around 6 to 7 hours as my long bike rides. And then depending on what my run is on the Sunday, I'll then do a transition run off the bike, which can be anywhere between half an hour to an hour and a half, and then the Sunday's the long run. I tend to do the bike ride on the Saturday and then the run on the Sunday, because I find that my legs are always a lot sore after the run than they are after the bike. And if I do the long run followed by the bike, especially if it's got a lot of elevation on the run, then the cycle really suffers, whereas I can do a harder bike session and then have the run, and it impacts my performance less. So that's my sort of typical training plan, 3-week blocks with then 1 recovery week, and building up in that structure, as I mentioned, with the Mondays and Fridays a bit easier typically in the training week. I do adapt it as and when required depending on work commitments, and also if we've got other stuff on at weekends, and I sometimes mix it up, so I might do 2 long rides back to back. I don't tend to do 2 long runs back to back because I find it then takes me too long to recover. I'd only ever do that really if I then had a recovery week scheduled in at the end of in the following week, so that I had the chance to recover. I hope you found the video interesting. I'd love to hear what you're doing for your training and what events you've got planned. I'm also going to start talking a little bit more about nutrition in the coming weeks and how I try and recover to ensure that I'm able to have progressive training weeks, because when I'm getting up to 22 hour training weeks, then I think nutrition and recovery is a key part of that as well. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate all the support, and I look forward to reading your feedbacks in the comment section down below.